I'm going to be. I'm working with slides that go all the way back to you guys as toddlers,
Yeah, good.
and so and you know some portraits of the family and your parents, and of course a lot of Eric and other relatives that
Yeah.
seem to be in there around the edges. Um, so what I would like is for you to cover kind of that period a little bit. And when I say cover, I'm really talking about pretty sketchy things like
Sure.
my parents moved to Bainbridge Island and blah blah blah. Um, Bob and I and Eric were friends since we were little, and we used to do blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Simple, nice and simple like that. And I'm kind of making a big deal out of this now because when I did this with Eric, I kind of didn't, and he was a little nervous, and I didn't coach him enough on not having to tell the whole story.
Well, I'm not sure you can get Eric not to tell the whole story, so it's...
Well, yeah, he kind of elaborates,
Yeah.
and so it was hard to sort of slow him down, but so
Yeah.
so that's the gist of it. I know.
Sure. Now, and I know what you mean. We're trying to do sound bites. You need context-specific things that make sense, unless you're showing a picture, and then you could slice out some stuff, and they'll know that that's whatever it is, a group of kids or something.
And
But
I
it's
will
tough.
have that. I will have that ability.
Yeah.
But it takes more work if
Sure.
I have more elaborate.
And also, before I forget, if you need, I've been pulling up pictures of Bob from stuff, so there may be some things you want to look at. You can tell, yeah, that's the kind of thing I need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. You have them available. That
Yeah, I just put things in some stacks, and we may want to look at that. And you can say, this is the kind of thing I need, and then I can go through, pull out those, and bring them to you or Wendy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So, do you want to just go back to your earliest recollections?
Sure.
Maybe you could say my earliest recollection of Bob is such and such.
Yeah. And I would say my earliest recollection of Bob is our living on Magnolia Bluff, and I was preschool, and Bob was a toddler, and we used to do things together playing around the house, and Bob was always happy and easy to play with, and seemed to be interested in everything. I think Bob had a great curiosity. He enjoyed playing and was very, almost to the point of being gullible. He just, would follow along whatever we were doing, and that made it kind of fun. We both lived upstairs in an attic, kind of over the garage, kind of a third story, and this little place that we each had a bed. And you get that all right? And so there was a lot of sort of interaction, continually, getting up in the morning, going to bed at night, and so on. So always coming and going in that space. And sometimes because our stuff would get merged across the divide, that I'd spend time kind of get his stuff over at his side and try to get mine clean up on my side. So Bob was pretty out there, open, and not tight and fastidious, but perhaps just the opposite.
So, can you come up with a nice little sentence about how you would characterize your relationship with Bob when you were little kids?
Yeah, I think that I had the role of older brother, and Bob kind of following along, to see what I was doing. So there was that sense. And our sister was 3 years older, so I think we were just 2 years apart. So I think that I was probably the closest connection. And I remember one thing, this was funny, my father sold parking meters, and there's a little piece inside that's only about like that. So we were sometime down in Magnolia Village waiting for my mom to do something, and we were playing catch with the parking meter. And one time I threw it to him, and he didn't quite catch it. It bounced off his head. Well, you can imagine the blood's coming down. And my first reaction, rather than taking care of him, was, oh my gosh, this is a bad thing. So I was crying. And Bob will always remind me, he remembers that he missed the parking meter, got hit on the head, and I cried. So, very, very easy to get along with. And I think everybody liked Bob. One thing to remember, he was the youngest. And my father actually was the youngest of 6 children. And his nickname is kind of a Swedish term, I think, is called skrappakaka, which means leftover. And Bob always mentioned that he was skrappakaka. He's the youngest. And I think as the youngest, it gave him the freedom to just be whatever he wanted. My older sister was the leading child, and she was pretty achievement-oriented, and I came along as the first son, and I was pretty achievement-oriented. And I think Bob looked at that and said, well, that's done, so why don't we just have fun? And I think that kind of characterized Bob. He was not someone, even as a kid, who was weighed down with expectations. I always kind of call it that he did not have the barnacles of expectation to slow him down, and he was that way as a kid.
That's really good. Can I get you to say all of that again, maybe a little bit slower, and just calm it down a little bit?
Sure.
How
much?
Part about your dad.
Okay.
And the
Scrapacaca. Yeah. All right. Bob was the youngest in the family, and my father was the youngest in his family. There were 6 children. And the term for my dad, as a Swedish family, was Scrapacaca, which relates to leftovers. And in our family dynamic, my sister was the oldest and was a real achiever, kind of like my father's son. I was the first boy, and I too followed after my sister and was very achievement-oriented. And Bob came along and saw that and said, well, that's taken care of, so I think I'm just going to have fun. And I think he did. So he was very easygoing in the family dynamic, and I think that made him loved by all.
And you mentioned that Bob sort of took on this nickname your father had?
Yes, that he too saw, this sort of the Scrapacaca leftover, and he would mention that he was Scrapacaca, and that in a sense almost allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And my father was pretty easygoing in that way too. He had very high-achieving siblings, and he was probably the most relaxed of all of the 6 people in that family, the kids.
I'm Norwegian, all my background Norwegian, and my mother's half Danish, so Scrapacaca rings a bell there.
Yes, yeah.
Like Krumakaca.
Yeah, right, that's right.
My dad had a story about the farmhand at the table who spoke no English when he was a little kid. My grandparents spoke Norwegian but wouldn't speak it with the kids, so they never learned it. And he said he always listened to pick up a little bit of Norwegian from these guys, They were all young roughnecks who'd come over on the boat. And he said my mother, the big meal of the day was noon, when we'd come in from the fields, and there was always mountains of food on the table, and then she'd finish it off with a piece of apple pie. Yeah. Kid never seen pie before. She set it down before him, and he goes, "Cockamischlops."
Juicy kind of.
Cake with slop. Or,
Yeah.
I always remember that from my dad. So that's nice. I like that scrapacaca.
Yeah.
So a little scrap of cake or a leftover.
Well, leftover, yeah. And it may have been even, I always thought of it that it was leftovers just from, the meal. But I realized with the word caca, that implies cakes. And so it was probably just like that. Whatever's around, we'll make a thing out of it.
Which probably in Scandinavian languages is more like some sort of a dessert. Caca.
Yeah.
It could be lots of different things.
Sure.
Rather than strictly cake.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think one of the things that is an interesting story on when we came over, because Bob was still young. I mean, he and Eric hadn't turned 3 yet, and they were like a little pair. That's one thing also to be aware of, is that there's the 3 of us still alive, or were still alive, and a lot of people thought of Bob and Eric as brothers, and they're only 12 days apart, Eric being 8 days or 12 days older. And so they went around as kids and did so much together when we were over here on the island, because we were right next to each other.
Go ahead.
And so when we first came to the island, we came in the summer of '48, and Eric's folks knew someone who lived in Agate Point, and there was a little summer cabin that was for rent nearby. And so they agreed to rent this summer cabin and bring both families over. So that's 4 adults and 5 kids stuffed in this little summer cabin on one of those typical wet, cool Bainbridge summers, the thing we call, January. It was that way. So it was wet all summer, cool. I remember our clothes being dried on the fireplace screens. I'm sure our mothers hated it. We all slept in sleeping bags around the living room. But for us kids, it was wonderful. It was like one big adventure. We just couldn't get enough of it. And so for whatever reason, they agreed to do it the next summer, but we rented a separate place, so we had two cabins. They were fairly close to each other. And that, I think, made it much better. Plus, the weather was perfect. It was one of those beautiful Bainbridge summers. And I think the hook was set with the adults. And of course, for us kids, we were on board right away. And so it was just a very playful environment. We spent time down at the beach, in the woods. It was just, every day was an adventure. And the county dock was still in good shape, so we could go out there in small boats and climb up and spend time on top fishing. Of course, swimming all the time we could. Didn't know that the water was so cold. Only later did we know that that was cold. And so there's all of us kids, from Bob and Eric at the younger end, all the way up to other neighboring kids who were probably 15 years older. And we were called the Coyote Kids. And we did a lot together. And there was a tree house that was built for the Coyote Kids. And when you could finally climb the tree, you were kind of a real full member of the Coyote Kids. We did plays together. They were the parents had a real knack at theater, and so Bob got involved with theater at an early age. We'd hang a sheet between two cedar trees and pull that back and have some sort of presentation for the parents sitting out there in chairs. So it was really a golden time for kids. And in all of that, Eric and Bob were this little pair, the youngest. And Bob, as always, was the fun one, the one who would follow, who was easygoing. And Eric was a little more serious and mischievous. He always had these things. He thought, why don't we try this? And Bob would say, sure, and away they'd go. And I remember a couple of things. One time some oarlocks disappeared from some neighbor's spot, and I think they went over the bank. Oh, shut that door. Yeah. Good. Should have thought of that before.
Movie set, or that'll show up in the
Yeah.
track.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to take this off.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be warm.
The radiant heating is working. When we came back from vacation, we'd not paid attention to fuel oil, being first to ever have fuel oil, and it ran out. So this place was cold when we first got back.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we're back on. Is this the kind of thing I think that?
Yeah.
So that mischievous part was the time when some oarlocks had disappeared, and the story is that Eric and Bob were tossing them over the bank, maybe just to see how far they would go. The other time was Eric found some paint, and at a neighbor's house, and they decided paint. They saw the paintbrushes and thought they would try painting. So suddenly a neighbor had some fresh paint on a wall, an external wall that they had painted. So they were a pair, and I think they remember those times too. And there are some wonderful pictures of the two of them together.
It's an interesting thing that when I talk to Eric, Eric says that Bob was the one who thought of those things.
Oh, he did. Aha. Well, there you go.
Let me move this down a little bit.
Okay. Anyway, so that was our introduction to Bainbridge Island, was summering here on the island. And we did that for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And a property became available out there on Agate Point. And so Eric's dad and our dad went together and bought it. And it was big enough to be split down the middle. So they built 2 summer cabins side by side on this piece of property. And we lived there for a summer. And then I don't know when the seed was planted, but they started talking about living year-round. And so I think they made that decision pretty quickly. So after that summer of living in the summer cabins, then designs were made to expand these into year-round living. And so that took about another year. And we spent a lot of weekends over here clearing things, doing chores and so on to make that happen. And in the summer of 1955, then we moved over year-round. And Eric and Bob went to 5th grade at Wilkes, and that was the first year that Wilkes was open. So they were in that first 5th grade class there at Wilkes.
So can you give me that line again? Just that both your families, Eric's family and your family, moved here in 1955, and he and Eric went to Wilkes.
Sure.
Just that much.
Sure. So in the summer of 1955, our parents moved over year-round, and Eric and Bob were in the first class, fifth grade class at Wilkes.
Good. So, can you talk a little bit about Bob's occupation and maybe sort of weave it together with your own? Maybe just kind of ruminate on how Bob took his path, you took your path. I know you were separated after you went to school for quite a while.
Well, like I say, I don't know if this was in here or not. I'll add this in. You can use it if you like. Bob went in the Army and went into Special Forces and trained as a medic and was quite good at it. And so at the training facility, they wanted him to stay on as an instructor. That was a possibility. And for us, as his family, we were quite relieved because we just thought he was going to be trained as a medic, he was going to go to Vietnam and be very much in harm's way. Well, as it turned out, he didn't have to go to Vietnam. He didn't stay as an instructor, but instead he got assigned to Germany at a recreational facility to be on the ski patrol. And I thought to myself, that's typical Bob. He just always lucks out. And we were so glad for him that he was over in Germany and not in harm's way.
That's beautiful. I wonder if you could say all of that one more time, but place it in the time so that we get the sense of the threat of to be drafted to Vietnam.
Yeah. So let's see, that would have been probably like around 60,
65?
Yeah, 65, 66, yeah, something
in
in
the
there.
height of it.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just
sure.
Up,
so Bob, after attending a year or so of junior college, went into the Army. And this was in the mid-60s, 65, 66, when Vietnam was ramping up. Bob went into Special Forces and trained as a medic and was very good at it and was being thought about as kept on as an instructor at the training facility rather than being sent to Vietnam. We were glad for that because Vietnam was getting very ramped up and they would be in harm's way in being in Vietnam as a medic. Instead, fortunately, Bob was assigned to Germany to a recreational facility there as part of the ski patrol. And we were indeed glad about that and thought, typical Bob, he really lucked out and got a good assignment, and we were so glad that he was not in harm's way. Shorter.
Good. No, that's good. That's
okay.
Good. So, can you give us kind of a picture of how Bob's life sort of evolved from there?
Yeah.
And just take it in short little pieces.
And this will be at some distance because I was kind of off in my life and Bob on his, and so we kind of connected periodically, but I did not see it close up.
Okay, can you name the time period there?
Sure. So he was in the Army through the late 60s and then came back, and I'm not sure how he got to Denver, Colorado area, but he did. I think that the piece of this is that while he was in Germany, he met Stephanie. She was over there. I'm not sure what she was doing. May have been part of the facility, maybe part of the support staff, feeding,
okay,
that kind of thing.
Those details I'll have to
edit out.
avoid.
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
so here's so simply
kind of sketchy.
Okay. So while he was in Germany, near the end of his assignment, he met Stephanie, and he and Stephanie came back to the United States, and he went to where she lived in the Denver area, and they were married and had 2 children. And while he was there, he worked with the county on landscape maintenance. And then
name the children.
Oh, and the children, Sean and Becca. And then they moved to Gunnison, Colorado.
Can you start that over and just say
sure.
They got married? You can start it with that.
Okay.
Cut back to what you're saying.
All right. When Stephanie and Bob returned to the United States, they went to the Denver area where she was from, and they were married and had 2 children, Sean and Becca. Then they went on to Gunnison, Colorado, where Bob was attending the local university there, studying pre-med. I think he also continued to work on the side in the landscape maintenance and so on, as he had done in Colorado. After time in Gunnison, they moved to the San Francisco Bay Area following a rather charismatic teacher. So they were part of something which they called the family. And there in San Francisco, Bob and Stephanie separated, but at that time he met a woman named Margaret, and they moved up to the Santa Rosa area, and there he worked for the county, again in landscape and tree maintenance. After some years there, they moved up to Bainbridge Island, and Bob then set up his own business when he arrived. And
the date.
Oh,
You say
yes,
that in
this would be the
about 79.
yeah, I think that's right. So let me say, I can cut in like this because you got the rest okay.
You can,
So,
yeah.
okay.
Just say in
Finally, near the end of the 70s, Bob and Margaret moved up to Bainbridge Island, and Bob established his own tree business. Margaret was doing house cleaning. That relationship ended while they were here, and Margaret went to Taos, New Mexico. In the early 1980s, Bob was very active in theater, as you know, and there he met Denise Harris, and they were married in 1983.
So let's go back to the tree thing. So do we
Yeah.
know how Bob started climbing the trees? I mean,
I'm going to guess he did that maybe with the county.
Not
You know, if you,
everybody in the landscape gets
yeah,
up in a tree.
right. I'm guessing when he was doing county work in Denver. That
And you don't have to know all the answers here. I'm really trying to tap into just Ric's sense of this.
Sure.
Know? So if you don't know, no problem.
All right.
So just tell me what you know,
Sure.
or what you guess.
Right.
I guess Bob got into trees while he was.
Yeah. Yeah, I can do it this way. Bob got into the tree business, I think, as part of working for the county in Denver. And my guess is that he did some tree climbing. They probably needed a climber, and he was probably very good at it. And so I think that's when he started getting his experience of doing more advanced tree work. And of course, when he returned to Bainbridge, he had all the trees he needed to continue this kind of work.
Good. So let's see. What can I? One more time, maybe you could just say, and I don't need to have any of those details about Margaret or whatever.
Okay.
I mean, if
Sure.
if her name isn't, it's fine, but I just
No,
can't follow that thread.
Yeah.
From if you could just start with from San Francisco, in 1979, they moved to Bainbridge Island, where
Right.
he got in, developed a little more of that tree stuff.
Okay, so he and his family kind of thing, or how do you
Just
do you want to?
if you could just use the pronoun, just say they
Okay.
moved from San Francisco to Bainbridge Island in 1979.
All right. At the end of the 1970s, they moved back up to Bainbridge Island and established their life here, with Bob setting up his own tree business and also getting involved in theater.
So maybe you could make that connection of he sort of re-entered the world of theater, which is something he started as a kid in a
Sure.
family
Yeah.
playground.
Well, and there's more I can add. This little piece you can use it. After high school, Bob went to Santa Rosa City College, and while there, he studied theater. Okay. And then I can say, when Bob returned to Bainbridge Island at the end of the 70s, he got very involved in local theater, picking up where he'd left off in college. He loved the theater and loved to act and everything in the background to help make everything work.
Yeah, okay. Try that one more time. That
Okay.
sounded a little studied.
It was. I read it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, don't read this time.
All right,
Just
all right.
tell me what you remember.
Okay.
He studied theater in Santa Rosa, so
Yeah.
he had something to back up what happened when he moved to Bainbridge.
Yeah. So maybe I could put that. All right. So actually, I could say that about getting back into theater, and just say he had done theater in Santa Rosa City College before, and then picked it up. Okay, I think we could do that. All right. Bob moved back to Bainbridge Island at the end of the 1970s. He set up his own tree business and became very involved in local theater, picking up what he had studied at Santa Rosa City College after high school. He loved the theater and loved all the aspects on stage and behind the stage.
Good, really nice, great.
Okay.
So let's just pick up where in the theaters where he met a lot of the friends that he has now, and wind up getting married to one of his castmates.
So I think I can kind of give you a flavor of that, because
don't try to make speeches.
No,
you don't have to.
Yeah.
No, just talk to me.
Sure.
Don't worry about anybody else listening to that. Again,
right.
I'm asking you to trust me because I'm
Sure.
going to protect you here. You'll sound good.
So once Bob was on the island,
talk to me,
and got involved in the theater, this became.
Sorry. Everything on for is it? Okay. Yeah. So just try to keep it as a conversation between you and me.
So once Bob returned to Bainbridge Island and got very involved in theater, he met Denise Harris, and they were married in 1983. Both involved in theater. This became their circle of friends and became a lifelong relationship for them both with people on Bainbridge Island. Bob was part of early theater. I remember Peter Pan, where he talked about trying to set up the rigging so he could fly the children. Typical Bob of figuring out a way to make that happen, and I'm sure the kids loved it.
Can you tie that together, the tree climbing and the ropes? And
Oh, that's a good idea, yeah.
Because
that is, yeah.
I remember him saying, I do ropes.
Yeah.
He liked to say that.
I do ropes, yeah.
I would.
Yeah. How does that to pick up just after they were married?
Why don't you try another stab at,
okay.
You know, he wound up meeting Denise in a play, and that led to him getting married.
Okay.
And you can just pick it up from right there. Don't have to reel back any
Okay. He was.
Don't think too hard.
All right,
Think of me as a conversation here now.
Okay.
Seriously, I mean, you look at me. That's probably a good idea.
All right. When he got back to Bainbridge Island, he became very involved in local theater, and he met Denise in one of those productions, and they were married in 1983. Bob loved the theater and all the aspects behind the stage work to make it happen. One thing I can remember in particular was the production of Peter Pan, and Bob always used to say, I do ropes. And so he took all that work he had, the tree climbing skills, and turned it into flying the children for Peter Pan. And I'm sure each of those kids loved being flown by Bob.
Good. Okay. Let's see where we're going to go from here. You have some ideas about what else you'd like to say?
I'm thinking about what it was like to come back to Bainbridge and sort of see Bob in his environment day in and day out, because I knew him as a kid, but when you come back and see your younger brother as an adult, it's very refreshing. It's a new relationship, and I can tell you about this.
That right there is exactly what I'm looking for.
Okay.
You spoke from the Ric.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be sort of an omniscient voice.
Yeah.
I was hearing your personality, so try to find that right there. Just tell me what Ric thought when he came back. So that's good.
One of the special things about me returning to Bainbridge Island in 2004 was a chance to reconnect with Bob on a very regular basis and to see him as an adult with his friends, because I had been his older brother, and there was a long period of time between when we were together as kids to when we were now together as adults. One of the special things was to sing in side by side with Bob and be able to sit back and just watch Bob interacting with people. It was a real treat for me.
Good.
I became very aware of how much Bob was part of the community when we first moved back to Bainbridge Island. Everywhere we went, when we said the name Cederwall, what we heard was, "Are you related to Bob?" He was clearly in everything on Bainbridge Island, and I understand why they call him Bainbridge Bob.
That's really good. That's precious. That's excellent. Good. Any other ideas you want?
Well, it was something around the returning to Bainbridge. I had thought about it, and what did I?
I pushed you around so much.
Yeah.
Thought out of your head, didn't I?
No, but it was something to do with coming back and seeing him as. Oh, I know. When we were kids, I pretty much was taller than Bob till we got just about at the end of high school, and then I moved away to college. And while I was gone, Bob grew a lot. But when I came back to Bainbridge Island in 2004, Bob was clearly taller than I was and bigger than I was, but he was also bigger than life. And although I am his older brother, I really tended to refer to Bob as my bigger brother because he really was bigger than life.
Nice. That's great. That's great, Rick. Unless you can think of anything else, I think I've got one.
Okay, I don't think so. I think the rest will come out. It's more what you were talking about is details. Yeah, I think that's. And if you think of something which you're putting together and you go, there's a piece we're missing here, or this is a piece I'd like, but somehow it seems like you said, staged or stiff. I'm happy to either on phone or just come by and we can tweak.
Good. Yeah, it might happen.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got a ton of stuff. I mean, I've seen this kind of process happen, and it's great to get all you have, and then the editing process is where the real art is. So
I'll tell you frankly, I'm really delighted to do this. It's a very healing process for me too.
Oh, good. Well, I was going to tell you, I appreciate your taking the lead on this because this will be a special way to add to this celebration.
Well, I take it pretty seriously, and it is love for me too. So both for Bob and craft. So, and seem to get a lot of practice at it lately. A few of these. Last summer, my brother-in-law, who's also named Bob, who was also 68, also died of a heart attack. Suddenly.
Whoa! Oh, you've been here, done this.
So, I was down there and gave a eulogy and also made a little slide.
Just down in California?
Tribute. No, this was in Arizona.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, it was in Minnesota because that's where he died.
Yeah.
They have summer place in the lake in Minnesota.
Yeah, so it's tough stuff, and I imagine it is healing in a way because
very much so.
They say that it's very important for people to talk because and share memories, and I'm hoping that this January 11th will be a part of that for people because it's. I think the place is going to be packed. It's a good thing you're putting family on stage. Get them out of the way.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Do you have other thoughts about that, sharing memories?
Yeah, I do. Because Bob was involved with so many things that there are many, many different ways to view Bob. He's like different facets of a diamond. And I hope that by all of us sharing that with each other, we get a chance to experience all of Bob.
Yeah, nice. Good. Yeah. So if you were going to sum up in a sentence, what he, let's just say what he means to you right now, right this moment, just you and me sitting in a room here, and you thinking about that, what does Bob mean to me? Don't say it for everybody else, just for Rick.
No, for me, he was like a very piece of my foundation that gave me a sense of who I was in relationship to Bob. And he was always there for an unconditional hug, which was very important to me.
I know that one too. Bob always gave me a big hug.
Yeah. Oh, Bob couldn't go down Winslow Way without stopping and waving and talking to gazillion people, and he was just sunshine.
Yeah, that's the stuff. That does get hard to talk about sometimes, doesn't it?
Well, it's missing. I mean, that's what I notice is that. I mean, I always, I there was something just the other day I was saying, I need to talk to Bob about that, and that's not an option. So it's
Now, what do we carry away from this? Because obviously we can't do anything about this. I mean, is this
well,
part of this? What do we?
I think that Bob was a great model of living life on your own terms and living every day to the fullest. I felt like he did everything he wanted to do. I never heard Bob saying, well, I'll get to it. It was always, if it was important enough to him, he did it. And, that I took a very, disciplined path in my life. And so I did a lot of pruning. And Bob was always just kind of going. And, I sensed that he enjoyed life. And he put a value on that, more than a value on income and, position in life and so on. I think because of who he was to the community, he created his own value in the context of that community, which is beyond money and position, I think. And you can tell by the response to him. When there are very rich people who have a lot of power and authority, who when they die, they just slip away. And that's not true for Bob.
Good point.
So, yeah. But, he was pretty authentic.
Yeah.
You didn't have to guess.
Yeah, and who would have ever thought by the time we're close to 70, he'd still have a full head of curly hair and all
Didn't he,
this
though? I know. He got it with my mom's side, I think, that she had hair, nice full hair, even though her dad was a chrome dome. I think she got it maybe from my mom.
Well, they say you get your hair from your mom, but
Yeah.
what happened to you?
I know. I know. Well, I guess that's the law of statistics on average. Yeah.
Well,
no,
my
he did.
mom's brothers were pretty bald, so I guess that's what happened.
Yeah.
My dad didn't have a lot of hair either. He
Yeah.
always used to kid me when I was a kid. Oh, I wish I had your head of hair, kid.
Yeah. And who knew?
He had more hair than I do
Yeah.
now, I think, when he died.
Yeah. Well, and our dad was pretty thin, kind of like me. Not actually, I'm thinner than our dad was.
Kind of nice what you say about the hair, though. If you want to run that line, that just Bob had all this hair. Where did it come from?
Yeah, sure.
It's all those pictures to show that
Oh, I know.
abundance.
One thing when you see pictures of Bob, especially now, he had a full head of hair, a beautiful head of hair, and you wonder, well, where did that come from? And it came from our mom. She had a beautiful full head of hair all the way till the end.
How about you?
Oh,
Well,
I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, let me run that again. I'll throw that in. Yeah, okay.
I'm not trying to.
Oh, no, that's all right. No, but I understand. Oh, that's all right.
That sounds so insulting.
No.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, exactly where you're going. Anyway, so let's try this. So when you look at pictures of Bob, right up till the last days, he had a beautiful full head of hair. And you look at me, and there's not much hair there. So where did it come from? And the answer is it came from our mom. She had a beautiful full head of hair even till her last days.
And she didn't want to share it with you. She gave it
That's
all
right.
up.
Yeah, right. My dad said, this is my gift to you, thinning hair. Because actually, interesting, Eric has a pretty good head of hair, too, and his mom had a good head of hair, whereas his dad was pretty thin.
Yeah, he does. That's true. Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of covered it.
Okay.
So, unless you think...
No, I think, you've got some material from this particular perspective, and I think it'll be enough maybe for you to talk about the early days. Oh, one thing, let's go out and just look at the kinds of pictures I have, and you can say, this is the kind I can use, this isn't, and then I'll know how to sift, because it won't help you for me to hand you an envelope. It'd be helpful if I can say, this is the year it came from. And
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. And can I just keep you on the mic here? And when
Oh, sure.
we go up there, maybe some things will happen when we talk.
Yeah, oh, that's fine.
About the
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, I was able to unearth some from the early days out here at Agate Point, and you may have plenty of those, and I have there's some family pictures.
It might be nice to have some more. And what I like is to have a lot of opportunity for making decisions.
Here, actually, let's go back in there. No.
Sure.
Oh, you need these?
Yeah. Hi, Linda.
Anyway,
Oh, no, not at all.
okay.
Ooh, none of that smells good.
It does smell good. I was gonna invite myself to
Did
lunch,
that-
but I'm gonna go to the diner, so I won't.
We're finally having our turkey.
Oh, that's...
We have so many vegetarian kids, it's like,
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to Cindy.
yeah, okay.
And you can give an idea of what kinds of things you can work with. These I kind of pulled out last night, so these are a bit everything, but there are some, but this is smaller. So I mean, there's pictures like this where you've got Bob, Army, and Bob playing with Keith McCormick. Here's the kind of thing like Bob with our sister, who's passed away. And this is one, and I have to say this must have been in Santa Rosa because it's a eucalyptus tree, and that's Bob up there in Santa Rosa. So I could probably date that as the 77-ish kind of thing. And this isn't a good because it cuts off Bob's head, but Bob and Bert had a real kind of competitive. They were always betting on football games, and this is probably a bread that Bob maybe used to get for Bert, like a krumkaka or a yulkaka. Oh, Bert is our stepfather. My dad died in '67, and then Bert and his wife lived right across the street from us in Magnolia. So we've known Bert from when we were kids. And so then he and my mom connected, because his wife had died. So then they connected, and Bert moved to Bainbridge, active in the golf club and so on. So there was a relationship they had. And then this was at Bert's 80th. And what I'll do, actually, you can have, if there's something you say, I'd like that one, we'll try to date it.
I'm recording you as you talk about this,
all right.
So I'm just going to put these in a pile in that order. And
All right.
And I'll have that as a reference.
Sure. All right. So this is a picture at Bert's 80th birthday party up here on Bainbridge Island. And what I could do, actually, I can date this for you if that would help.
Yeah, you mean to say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to do one other thing here.
Okay.
That is, I'm going to get a little video going here so that I don't have to try and figure out which one we were talking about when we were doing this, okay?
Did you want to go back to the beginning?
Okay, let's do it.
And these aren't really going to be in any sort of
Here,
order.
you can just flip them over.
Yeah, and I'll put these out of the way because it's...
Oh yeah, we haven't gone through this yet. Okay.
No.
So that's Army.
Okay. So this is in December
Yeah,
of...
don't just
Okay.
put it down.
Oh, yeah, sure. So that's December 1966 when Bob was home on leave. And this is Bob playing cards with Keith McCormick. This is Bob with our sister Judy. And unfortunately, I don't know the day of that, but it's probably in the 70s, I would guess. Maybe. This is Bob climbing up in a eucalyptus tree, I'm going to guess, in Santa Rosa, California in late 70s. This is Bob with our stepfather, Bert. They used to kid around a lot about gifts they give each other. That's probably yulkaka. This is Bob and me on July 22nd, 1994, celebrating Bert's 80th birthday. At the same event with our mom. This is Bob when he was probably in early high school at best, and I think that may be Eric behind him, clowning around. Yeah. And this is Bob on a trip, probably in the around 1960 with our family. That's not such a great picture. Head's lost on that.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
You don't have to critique them.
Oh, okay.
What you know? What time period this is? That might help me.
Oh, sure. I'm going to guess
Who's
that
that Bert?
that's actually our dad and mom and Bob, and that's probably in the 70s. Guess.
When did your dad die?
Actually, not 70s. Would have been in the mid 60s. Sorry.
Okay, so
Mid 60s. Yeah, because he died in 1967. Good call. So actually, that's not a. Sorry. And let's see. That's Bob and our sister Judy and her husband Chuck. Again, probably in the mid 60s, I guess. And here's Bob with mom, maybe in the early 80s. Bob with our sister Judy in right around the mid 60s, I would guess. Let's see. I'm not sure why these actually didn't mean to get in there because they're not Bob. Okay, we can stop for a second. And this is Bob in 1968 down on the bulkhead checking out a tree that had fallen. I don't know if you have this family picture. This was...
I have a bigger one. So
oh, perfect. Okay.
Talk about that.
All right. So this is in the Christmas of 1965 when we'd all come home. And so we had Arnie Rodall take some family pictures. And this was one of them. So this is our mom and dad and sister Judy and Bob and me.
And where are you?
Oh, we're at our home on Agate Point. And then this is a great picture of the
Do you
Cederwall family.
Excuse me, let me
Sure.
go back to this one. Do you remember the address of this house?
Yes. But it's a post office box. It's
where
Agate
is
Point. Oh, it's
How would you find it now, today?
okay. If you were to go out to Agate Point, as if you're going to Blodell's and turn left instead of going straight into Blodell's, and the next to the last right turn on that road,
North.
yeah, you don't go to North Road, but just the one before that is the road we used to go down to our piece of property.
And it goes right down there. So if
Yeah.
you follow that road straight,
And at
one
the very
thing
bottom,
right.
you go left at the very bottom. Otherwise, you can go right, and then you'll go down to some other house on the right. So we were to the left there. And it's right next to the piece of property where Mary Braden lives, where if you go down North Road and then take it all the way to its end is Mary's house, and we were right next to Mary.
Yeah, I've been to Mary's many times.
Okay, well, if you keep going, the next property over is ours.
So if you when you turn right on North, you head down, and Mary's is kind of at the end of that.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's at the other end of North?
No, it's at the end of, if North kept going, that's our house.
So you are going to turn right when you get to the end of that Blodell Road. North.
Left. No, actually, come down. Is that what that's called, road? If you turn left, I thought it was like Agate Point something. But maybe it is called North. Anyway, if you were going to Mary's house,
Yeah.
you would eventually go all the way to the end, and you would turn right and go down the hill and so on. Okay.
Yes.
And then her road, the road takes her up to her house. Well, since we're just next to her house, but North doesn't go that far south, then we turn at a road that goes off into the trees just before, it's the last right you can take. And it goes down.
The last right.
Yeah.
I see.
So it's a right before her right turn to go down North Road. And so our properties are right next to each other. We grew up next to each other. Yeah.
Got it. Do you have a picture of the house?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, that'll settle my...
Sure.
Because I was thinking I'd love to have a picture of that house.
Yeah, I can find
I
that.
would even go over there, but... it'd
No,
be a
I've
lot
got
easier.
something that, yeah.
Okay.
And if I have it in there, I can pull it out.
Okay, let's go to the next
Okay, this one is and you may, if you don't have it, this is a wonderful family picture of us young'uns, okay, with our grandmother. So what you're seeing is Bob is on the lower left. And do you want to know I can tell you who's in it if that helps.
Sure.
Okay, so behind Bob is our cousin Eric, who passed away in 1969. And then there's me, and then there's Eric, wonderful Eric.
Well, what's this other Eric's name? That's
Oh,
confusing.
this is Mike.
Oh, okay. So you said cousin Eric, but that's cousin
yeah.
Mike.
There's cousin Mike,
Okay.
who's Eric's older brother.
Okay.
And he, as I said, died in 69.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And then this is Eric.
And
this
that's
is,
you in the middle there. Between
that's
Eric.
me, yeah. And I'm going to guess this was probably taken in about 1950. About 1950.
So Bob's only 4 there?
Yeah. Well, it might be 5 because I think this is probably Christmas time.
So 51 or late
50. I'd say Christmas of 1950 is what I think, because I'm guessing the two are about 5. And then there's our cousin Susie, our cousin Chris, and our cousin Pam. And then behind Pam is our sister Judy. And then this is our grandmother Kirsten.
Good. Okay. So, can you just say that this is you and Bob and Eric and Eric's brother Mike with Grandma and a bunch of cousins?
Sure.
Or Judy or something like that. Something about here are
Okay.
all the siblings
Oh, yeah.
with Grandma at a Christmas thing around
Right.
1950. Just real simple.
Sure. So here's a wonderful picture of all of us with our grandma Kirsten. We think around Christmas 1950. So it shows Bob and our cousin Eric and cousin Mike and me and our other cousins.
Good. Okay, what else you got here?
Okay, so that's in that. So let me. So these you've all looked at. We'll put these. Let's put these in this envelope for you.
Sure. Got it?
Okay. Now I will see if I can find a picture of. I mean, here's a picture of Bob in 1967 holding up my son, his nephew, Chris. And Chris is probably about 6 months old.
It doesn't want to record that.
Oh, okay.
Enough battery here.
Ah.
Shoot.
It's okay.
Um,
Well, here, anyway, let me just, I can see that, there's a lot of, kid photos. Here's Bob in San Rafael. We took a trip to California. And so there's these kinds of pictures, which, here's the kind of beachy pictures that I think are great fun, with Eric and Bob.
excellent.
Lots of Eric and Bob shots that I think are the most fun.
Oh boy, that's adorable.
Yeah. So what we can do is, if you want,
More of the family here.
I can do some writing on the back of these and bring them to you or Wendy.
Not really necessary.
Okay.
I won't be able to get into that granular level
Okay.
of
All right.
identification.
All right.
These will go by pretty quickly.
All right.
And
Sure.
especially since I have a lot of pictures of these guys, I'm going to blend them all together in a little sequence probably. So
Okay.
it's going to be perfect.
Here's if these.
Yeah, I do have this one.
Okay. Good. So
I
we'll
have
keep that one out.
Yeah, that's a cute picture.
Yeah.
I must have
here's
been in the 80s sometime.
I think so.
And this is with your dad.
Yeah.
Whose name was what again?
Roy.
Roy, that's right.
Yeah. There's
So
this
we
one.
got the
where-
date on that, 1960. Cool.
And then,
He was pretty tall too.
yeah, he was. That's where Bob got his
You
height. I
can't
think.
tell in some of those other pictures because he's sitting down.
Yeah.
Let's see, so that's Bob and
That's me.
or you in the middle.
Yeah. I was looking to see house. I mean, this is a great shot. This was the summer Bob fell off the porch and broke his collarbone. And there's actually a great story about that. He was playing on the porch. He fell, broke his collarbone, went down to the clinic, and they took this X-ray and they saw this big black spot.
So try that again. 'Cause
Okay.
I'm getting you doing.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. I don't think how old that would have been. That would have been sort of in the summer around early 50s. So one summer in the early 50s, Bob fell off the porch and broke his collarbone. And we rushed him down to the clinic, and Cindy Wilt was there and took an X-ray of Bob and not only saw the collarbone break, but saw this big black spot. And we had to sort out that Bob had been down to the beach collecting rocks and had a rock in his pocket when they took the X-ray.
Good.
So, here's snow. That doesn't show too much of Bob's. I don't think that's such a good one.
Is that the house?
Yeah, and I've got a color one of the house. But
This is fine. I like it.
okay,
If you want to keep these together, I
Sure.
think it's
yeah, if you can work with that, that's good. That's the four boys playing basketball. But here's the one. This is over on Magnolia, so this would have been, maybe like 53 or so.
That's Bob.
This is Bob, and then this is me, and I can't tell whether that's Bob or
I
me,
see.
but this one is. I know we had the same kind of shirts, which didn't help.
Oh my God! Yeah, now I see the faces different. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's four there. Okay, I see.
Yeah, so it might be,
But that's you there, isn't it?
I was trying to figure out if that's me or Bob. I think that may be. This I know for sure was Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough to. So this is me, I think that's me, not sure.
Okay.
But that's Bob for sure.
All right. Good. All right.
And this is all of us kids there, 1956. So there's Bob. And here's Bob in boat.
Nice.
And then here's, I can't tell you what date this is. You can see how Bob and I actually, there were times when we were same height. So that's probably not too long after we came over to the island, so it could have been like 56 maybe. And our dog.
Yeah, I would put it right in the mid-50s.
Yeah, here's 66, Bob, with his.
Got a lot that came from this camera.
Yes, you see a lot of those.
I have a lot of squares like this in there.
I think that was my mom always taking pictures. You notice my mom's never in those shots, so she was probably always taking pictures. This is 56 when we were down in San Rafael, staying at a pool. So there's Bob.
Picture.
And this is later. This would have been, I would guess, in the probably 63, 64 time when Bob was at Santa Rosa and I was at Stanford.
That's a 1960 something.
Yeah, that is, isn't it?
Probably a Chevy, huh?
Yeah. Oh, here.
That's you and Bob.
Yeah.
Couple of punks.
High waters. Yeah.
Couple of punks. Bob's got this.
You know, if you ever look at pictures of Bob, he's always got his own little bit of twinkle and mischievousness about it. I mean, I always feel like he's not. There are other things that are more serious for Bob in life than, so he's there just enjoying it. You know, he never looks real serious, which I think is kind of special. This is 60.
Nice.
And these are more square shots from about the same. I think this is probably, he was in the Army at that point, so I'm guessing, again, sort of a 64, 65, something around that time frame.
One of the cats.
Now here's Bob looking very military, 1967.
With a balcony, balustrade behind him. And
Yeah,
glass
I'm going to guess
windows.
at the airport, coming or going, because he was back in Fort Bragg, so he had to come a ways. This is a super shot. This is 68, and I'm wondering if he's in Germany fishing.
So it looks like he's on a snow.
Yeah, with a
There's
river.
snow, but there's a little open ice.
So
right
I
there
can't
with the
tell
river.
whether he
He's
was-
got a fishing rod.
Whether he was back on leave, because he would have been still near the, I don't know if he was out of the Army at that point, so I can't tell you where that is.
1968.
But it's a 68 picture, yeah.
June it says. So is
June
that
of 68.
ice?
Yeah, so I'm thinking he's up in a mountain someplace, and I just don't know if he'd have been in Germany yet or back to the States. More Army of 60 tells you at least 67, so
Got
that
quite a
other one
few
could have
of
been in
these.
60.
Maybe
Yeah,
I've got a lot of him in that uniform.
Okay.
That are better than that.
and there's probably, I'm sure he was in the military looking as, so that may have been 60,
He's standing at
67.
parade rest.
Yes, yes.
That's your property there at Agate.
Agate Point, yeah. Can't tell you a good time that's with our dad.
So at Agate Point. Square camera must have been late 60s.
Yeah, this is again, same time as that other picture was taken when he was holding my son Chris up. That he had him in his arms. So
nice.
one of those two might be good.
Your baby, gotcha.
Yeah, and then this is our dad again.
The three gentlemen in
Yeah,
sport coats and ties in front of the window. Yeah, that's good.
and you might have another. I think you do the same. So this is again. I'm going to guess 60, 50, maybe 50.
And that's mom with the two boys.
No,
wearing
sister.
sweaters?
It's our older sister.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, because she looks like
Yeah, no,
she's dressed almost like a
Yeah.
mom.
So
and
that
you
would have
guys
been
are so
kind of
much
a-
younger.
56-ish kind of thing. Just soon after we came to the island.
So you guys in your sweaters with bow ties.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is a great shot, and this is when we were building our cabin. So this is probably like 54, maybe. You know, we came over during a weekend, and we're trying to put this summer cabin together.
So that's the four
Four of us.
boys. So Mike is the tallest.
Right. So it's Mike and
Eric
me,
is the shortest.
and Eric and Bob. Yeah. Actually, this is sort of a age thing, because oldest, youngest.
Got it. Yeah. So you're standing outside the unfinished cabin.
Right, and that's our cabin.
Right. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that one. Well, here's.
All my looking at pictures in all my life, I've never seen pictures stuck together. Like
Oh yeah, it was just sort of. They came that way out of these things that you would unfold them,
Yeah.
and so this is Bob with. So this again may be like the winter of '56 type of thing, or '57.
He's pulling a sled full of
Wood.
and his
Yeah.
snowman
And this is
like ice fort or snow fort. Or
yeah.
something. Cool.
So anyway, so that's a fun one.
50.
I'm gonna guess that's the winter of '56. but I can't tell because
He's
Bob
gotta
looks a
be
little
at
older.
least 8 there.
Oh yeah,
Must
no,
be
he's
more like 9 or 10.
yeah, and he was 10 when we came over. So this, I'm just guessing it's certainly a mid-50s is
Okay,
a safe bet.
Gotcha.
Here's a picture from, this is first day of school, although it says April 60th. It looks, we used to take first day of school pictures, so I'm not sure. Maybe it was another special thing because it says April 60th, unless it sat in the camera, it was finally developed.
Wow.
Because I was wearing that because I was the student
Bob
body
would have been
president, so I had to be good.
14 in April 60.
Yeah, and
And so you would have been.
I would have been a senior, so he was a sophomore.
Right.
And that may have been the spring. Maybe we were going for some, I don't know why. I was dressed up and she took a picture, not sure.
Bob's in the white car coat. And
Yeah.
Rick's in the jacket and tie,
Yeah.
striped tie.
Now this might be a better, the one you had where there was a whole roll, I wasn't sure who was who. Well, this is that same day.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
The identical shirts.
yeah. So that may be an easier
And that's
shot.
Judy.
Yes, Judy, yeah.
So how much older is Judy than you?
3 years,
Just 3.
yeah. She looks older there, yeah.
She does.
Well, she would
She
get,
looks like an adult.
yeah.
You guys look like young kids. So here's everybody sitting out.
On Agate Point in
Yeah.
that case. So I'm not sure how these all got, it's because the time frame doesn't look quite right unless because this is usually first day of school. What she might have done is
This
taken
is
pictures.
back in Magnolia, though.
Yeah. So this would have been September, pretty close to when we moved up, maybe September like 54 or something. And maybe what happened is but we had our place.
This summer.
It's funny that they're all together because our place looks pretty established here with the lawn and so on. And yet here's
I
this
may be
picture.
able to use one or two of these, and I
Sure.
certainly can use that one.
Yeah.
Cool.
That one seemed to be the one. I just rather than
Yeah.
tear them apart
Right.
yet.
It's good. You don't want them torn apart.
It helps. Yeah. Anyway, this is another one of probably mid 60s, maybe even
Yeah.
later. So you may have a bit of those.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's.
Anyway, here's a fun one. You have one of Bob in the boat, but here's Eric and Bob together in the boat.
Boat pictures, that's good. I like that.
And so there's a
Okay.
bunch of those. There we're working, they're trying to figure out, what's going on with the motor. And there's Eric all by himself.
Eric.
These are the parents. So this would have been Eric's dad and my dad, and that's me, and it's my boat.
Were they brothers? Is that where the connection was?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
see. Roy and
John.
John were brothers. Okay.
Yeah,
Silvertone Fold-A-Pack.
yeah. So that must have been our popular processing was
Yeah.
the folder packs.
So,
Oh, and this is another good.
West Coast Wholesale Drug.
And that we got it someplace somewhat local.
Oh, it says West Coast Wholesale
Yeah.
Drug, so
Yeah.
kind of like Bartell's. Oh, boy.
So this is our dad who was the scoutmaster, and
see.
Bob and me. And this might be the better one of Bob.
So, that was an activity that you and Bob shared.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah, just tell me that.
Okay,
You guys were Boy Scouts and your dad was a Scoutmaster. It can be
Yeah.
just as simple as that.
okay. You recording?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things we did on the island, especially soon after we got here.
Yeah, so let me just ask
Okay.
you don't have to start with anything.
Okay.
Just if you just
Okay.
say that.
Sure.
We were Boy Scouts and my dad was yeah.
Okay.
Really, just that simple.
Okay.
Is better than an elaborate.
All right. Bob and I were Boy Scouts, and our dad was the scoutmaster.
Perfect.
What was great, he was a businessman, and he was a fundraiser, and so he had us make cedar rope, and we would sell the cedar rope to all the businesses around. So,
That for decoration? What's
yeah, for Christmas decoration, basically. Oh, I don't have it here, but there was actually a picture in the review about us over at Camp Yomalt making this cedar rope, and so you'd get a wire, and you get these cedar branches, and you tie them in, and of course carve the hell out of your hands. But it smelled good, it looked good, so, and so he was always thinking about how he was going to raise money for the Scouts. And he stayed in Scouts longer than we did. He got on the council. I mean, he thought Scouts was a good deal, so he was very involved. In fact, he was involved in Cub Scouts over in Magnolia. And he had this fundraiser he put together of selling light bulbs. So we sold light bulbs all over the neighborhood and raised money for the Scouts. So Bob's entrepreneurial spirit came from my dad. It did not come to me. I got my dad's thin hair, but did not get his business stuff.
That's good.
Yeah. Kind of more of the, I think a Scout picture is better. This is, I'm not even sure when that is, but it's probably like 56, 57, something like that. Oh, here we go. This is a,
That's,
oh, this is Eric and his older brother Mike.
oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
How much older was Mike than Eric?
3 years, because he's a year older than me.
A year older.
Yeah. We always had these first day of school pictures, and I'd swear this is, and I'll bet it stayed in the camera. So this probably was taken in like September of 1959, is my guess.
Right on the corner.
Yeah, on the
The
corner of our
same
patio.
place.
Oh my God, that was the place.
Oh,
That's
that-
right. More boat pictures, sort of Bob. And I mean, you can see the dock, by the way. It was in great shape. It was actually, well, it hadn't fallen down yet, so we spent summers on top of that.
What dock is it?
It's the old county dock. If you go out and look at, if you go to Suquamish and look back at the island, and you see that first area of land is the Agate Point area, and you see pilings in the water, that's the remains of the old county dock. And this is where the mosquito fleet, there was a stop there, and they used to unload stuff. Yeah. So this is Bob doing the boat. I don't know if that's a useful one or.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. I probably ought to get you a big envelope to. Yeah. Okay. So Bob, this is sort of summer.
It's the
And,
cheesecake picture.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good fishing.
Fish one is good.
Yeah. So let's see. This Mike and Eric. Oh, good. Oh, good picture of Bob. Oop. There we go. I think that's pretty cute.
Yeah, really nice.
I keep thinking we had one fish and we passed it around for pictures.
Good.
Anyway, so yeah, that's a fun picture of Bob and fish. So this was summer cabin. Let's see. Actually, this is the neighbor's old shed where we were digging. And this is Bob and Eric, and I don't know what they're doing. It's not very well developed.
Get that one.
Let's see if there's St. Ruth. So more than so that's this is the door you saw the kids,
Yeah.
us 4 kids,
I remember.
and but so this was the.
I recognize Ruth. I did.
Oh
remember.
yeah, okay.
Is that? Well, there's Bob with the box. Is that you with them? Or that's?
Oh, that's Mike and me.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see it now. Okay, so that's the neighbor's place.
Right.
This is the cabin.
This is and Mary's place is right over here.
Okay, gotcha.
And so this is before we expanded it into year round, and I will find hopefully a picture of that.
How did Bob ever talk about Lila?
Well, it's
He
complicated.
always told me about it, and
Yeah,
I
I think they had an agreed upon thing that and of course it all kind of came unglued. So the whole history.
well, I mean, he told me that he and Mary had a baby.
Yeah.
And it was unexpected, and it was in high school. Yes.
No. It was he was in Germany, in the army, and she was out of school. It was a flight attendant for Pan Am. So she had business over there, and so she may have taken some extra time, and they connected up over there, and so it was. I would guess Lila was born in probably 69, so maybe this was 68, towards the end of his time over in the army.
Now that part I didn't know, that it was,
Yeah.
Mary had flown to Germany. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So, I've never really questioned Mary about it because Bob had told me what the deal was,
Yeah.
and I know how other people feel about it, so I never probed anybody. Because I
Right.
thought it might
Well,
be
and
a
I think it just
thing.
kind of worked out best because then, when what they did, of course, the parents go, okay, what are we gonna do about this? And so they married for like a day or whatever, So they were married
They
for a very
did
short.
get married.
Yeah, to get married, then it got annulled. So Bob actually had four. Denise was wife number 4 because there
Well,
was Mary
so
and Steph and Margaret and Denise.
Mary was first.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it was mainly so that Lila would have a kind of a father.
yeah.
And then what happened is that so then it was annulled, or however they
Well,
did that.
Was everybody pretty exercised about that? Did they?
Well, it was very quiet.
It was a bad deal.
It was just kind of a let's
Was
see,
it guilt
let's make the
and
best of a It was kind of a. But I think the parents sort of got together and said, okay, how can we handle this best? And this was the way. And then Mary then met Dick. I don't know whether she was stationed out in New York. He was living on Long Island, and so then they married. And so really, in effect, then that became great because I may even been at Dick.
Within the first year of Lila's life, she married Dick.
Yeah, and I'm thinking.
I didn't know that.
So what I'm thinking is that she was pregnant, so they got married, so it would have a father. Then it was a sort of annulled, and I don't know whether Mary and Dick got married even before Lila came along or after. I'm not sure the
Well-
timing. Probably maybe just after.
Don't worry, I'm not going to get
Yeah.
involved in elaborating any of this.
But anyway, so
now
so
I
the
am
whole
curious.
so the whole thing was to try to make a good thing out of what was, unintentional.
Right.
To give Lila a family and not a sense of the.
There was no intention to stay married then.
No, it was made for the child.
I see.
And I think especially once Mary met Dick and there was a family unit there that it got kind of quiet so that so Lila didn't know, and which I think is appropriate. I mean, so it became her family was, and of course then they had Ben, her younger brother. So now you've got a family that makes sense.
When did she find out then?
She found out in her teens. In fact, she told me she was on her way to gym camp and it came out. And so I'm sure there was some discussion about whatever, and maybe somebody said, well, something. And it's like, oh, really?
Oh.
So it was a lot for her to deal with. But what was
Do you
interesting,
remember what age she would be then?
14 maybe or something like that, plus or minus.
She was already into theater.
Oh, yeah.
And I had
So the thing
pictures
is
of
that-
her in shows with Bob.
Well, and the thing is that she knew Bob as this wonderful guy that she, met in theater, because that's kind of when he came back to the island. And she knew my mom because she always used to come right over. I mean, she spent a lot of time at Mom's house. Just a lot. Here comes Lila coming over to see Gigi, which is what she called my mom. So there was this wonderful relationship that she had with these people. They were, it's just like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
And then when she found out that actually Bob was her father, I don't think it was bad news. I think it was surprising news, because Dick was very different. Dick was kind of more of a taskmaster.
Oh, sure.
Very productive, obsessive and getting things done. But I think he probably was a hard father, demanded a lot.
Obsessive is definitely the right word.
Yeah. So this I think was good news, but surprising to a kid. Kind of like, why didn't you tell me? Or what does this mean? What do I do about it? And gee, that woman I loved next door is my grandmother, kind of, because she already had a grandmother from Mary. But I don't know about Dick's folks. I don't think they were in the picture. So, at the end of the day, it was all good news, but I think it was very, I can imagine it's like a little earthquake.
Sure.
And
It would be disturbing.
so then
to find out that your dad-
she and Bob really developed their own relationship,
Yeah.
which is good. In fact, he went down to visit her in February when Denise and Bob went to Southern California. And so that was the last time that Lila had seen him. And it was a good connection.
I have that photo
Yeah.
of them on the porch.
And so I think that it all worked out fine. And I think that with my mom, I don't know quite how, I'm sure there was a connection about that, but, that was a good relationship. And it was good with Mary. My mom and Mary got along. So, in the end of the day, it all, I think, worked out, but it had some potential trouble spots. And the thing was not to make a big deal out of the fact that Bob was her biological father, and, just kind of just say,
So,
we're all friends. But I know Bob and Mary had to kind of agree that they were going to live on the island, and I think it worked out. But it was, it wasn't so
I'm
easy.
trying to think of when Bob actually told me this, but he probably told me because so in 1981 he and Denise and I were all in the same play together, and
Yeah.
that's when the three of us met, along with a lot of other people, Bart Burton,
Sure.
and Sue Harrider and all the rest of them. And I was real close to those two for at least the next 6 or 7 years, I suppose. Almost 10. And I'm trying to think of when I was aware about Lila. I think it might have been towards the end of the 80s. So Lila already knew, apparently. And Bob was, he was very nonchalant about that information.
Yeah.
You would marry? That's really? You know, because most people are so, excitable about things like that.
Yeah.
And they really want to keep it a secret.
Well, I think they wanted it was like it wasn't so important that no one know so much as it not become a deal, and the thing is, see, because Mary was involved in theater too, she did costumes and so on. So I mean, it was like everybody was there, and I think Mary had kind of put it to rest. Basically, I think everybody involved had found a way to put it to rest. So as long as other people didn't get all excited about it,
she certainly doesn't bat an eye about it anymore.
No.
And I know Mary really well, so I still serve on the same Island Theater board with her.
Okay.
20 years
Yeah.
almost.
And so she's good people. It was not the right combination. I mean, she and Bob are not the right connection. And it's funny, actually, Mary and I kind of were connected. I mean, we wrote to each other when I was away at college, and
I've seen pictures of her when she was working for the airline. She was quite a dish back then.
Yeah.
Too.
So actually, in fact, she visited me and my former wife when we were in San Diego, and it was actually, I thought it was a nice career for her because it got her out.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like Mary was going to be destined to be, almost stuck someplace, and so it was nice for her to travel.
Matronly.
Yeah. And she's very good at keeping things organized. I mean, she has a wonderful skill set. It just has to be with the right person. So I think the situation worked out fine. And, Lila was brought up in a family and had a brother, and it was all made sense. And now there was this new information, but maybe far enough down the road that she could, it wasn't easy. I mean, I don't think it was just, it was more like, what? So she had to deal with that.
How do you talk about that in terms of, or is it just sort of left out there and unexplained?
Well, it isn't talked about, unless someone wants to know. For example, the issue of who sits on the stage. Well, Mary won't be sitting on the stage, but Lila will be. Yeah.
And so something should be said about her as the daughter. Yeah?
Oh, yeah, I think, and I put it in the obituary that way, that he was survived by Sean and Becca and Lila. And I didn't put in, he has another son, well, it's the son of Steph, but not Bob, named Justin, who is maybe a couple years younger than Becca. And it just turned out that, it was not his child, and that kind of precipitated the split of that relationship.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that was the bad blood.
Yeah. With Steph, yeah. So, and I'm not sure.
With somebody else's baby while they were still together.
Yeah, and this was an old friend of hers, high school friend, Tom Whitney. So then they married and actually stayed together. And so, like, Sean and Becca are both Whitney, not Cederwall. And I have a picture someplace of my sister and me holding a quilt that we'd all made for Justin, because it was Justin Ivor Cederwall, born in I don't know what it would have been. I was going to say 76, but I don't know if that's right. Anyways, that's maybe 73. Enough so that Bob had a vasectomy. That was sort of the test, vasectomy, child. So, and I think it became known maybe when they were in San Francisco, because may have happened just before they left Colorado, and so it's so maybe it was born in 71. Anyways, so messy business, and so that created a parting of company. And Margaret was part of the family there, and so I think they connected up. Bob was very active medically. I mean, he delivered babies, and he was kind of a very present guy in that group. But that didn't last too long. That was Stephanie's thing, and Bob kind of pulled out from that, moved up to Santa Rosa.
That's where you met Margaret.
Yeah.
I remember Margaret was...
She was a pretty assertive person. Yeah. And it's funny, Bob was in Santa Rosa, they were living there. I don't think they were married. I don't know if they got married or not. But he at some point said...
They never were officially married.
Well, Yeah, maybe not. I know he didn't adopt the kids. I thought maybe they got married. But whatever it was, there came a time where he thought, I don't know if I want this. And so I think he kind of, came up to Bainbridge for a little bit, trying to kind of get away and sort things out. And she was hot on the trail. So he kind of, I think, settled saying, oh, well, okay. And I wonder if a part of that settling was they did get married. Whatever it was not very long term, and it didn't involve adopting the kids. But he was very important to the kids, especially the boys, Jason and Travis. I mean, they needed a father, and he was really good to them. And I think stayed connected with them a little bit over time. Then they had a younger daughter, Sadie. I mean, it was Margaret did, and she got involved in theater, and I think that was helpful. And then there was an older daughter whose name I can't remember, who stayed in California. But the boys, they were in Bainbridge High School, and I think they kept. One may have graduated, but they spent a fair amount of time there before Margaret left the island. And the younger one was good at football. So I bet they were on the island. The boys were in high school for a couple of years at least before they went to New Mexico. And I think it was Jason and Travis, and Jason was good at golf, and Travis was good at football.
So Bob must have come back to the island in 77, 78 then. Because I met him in 81. He was still with Margaret, but by 82.
It was gone. Yeah.
Because I was there.
But no, he may have been more like he might have been 79 because she went. Yep, it may have been 79 because it would have given him a couple of years on the island, and then things hit the fan, and by 82 she's gone, and maybe the boys are gone, so that gave him a couple of years. So I think 79 is a pretty good target date for his return.
79.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like that. Anyway, so it was a little bit of a turbulent history. And less turbulent.
Well, I like to give Lila her due.
Well, I think it'll happen in the context of. No, I mean, in a sense, it'll be his children, Sean, Becca, and Lila, because they're going to be on stage, and I think Sean and Lila are going to do something with the candle ceremony, so there'll be some acknowledgement.
And Sean is actually going to speak.
Oh, good. Okay. And I suspect that will be fine. I don't know that Lila is looking to speak. So this is...
No, she hasn't said so.
Yeah, and Lila, sounds like. So, ask her what she wants to do. And I can check too, but, maybe one of the things that she knows more what she wants to do when she gets here, but I think she'd be happy just to be on stage with us. Because I don't think she wants to stand up on Bainbridge Island and say...
All of the things have been... All of the speakers have been settled now.
Yeah.
I think we have 8 or 9.
I remember that, seeing the list, yeah. Anyway, so I don't think she's looking to speak. I could say she'd be very good.
Yeah,
being
of course she would.
Actress.
Yeah. But I see that's.
Yeah. And I don't think that. I think it's probably good not to have some visual present that.
There, I have at least one picture of Lila and Bob together with the kids on the porch.
Right, in her place down in Pacific Grove.
It'll probably just be, I'm not gonna. There is no attempt here at all on my part to try and do a slideshow where this is this is this,
right.
This is this.
People can just look.
We're going to have your voice and Eric's voice just woven in at parts of it, and believe me, it will be small bits of it, so that there is no need to have everything elaborated.
Right.
It will just kind of flow in images, but we'll have a little bit of vocalizing to put it together.
Yeah.
And
Denise might be good too. Have you talked with her about later years?
She knows that I was going to interview you two, and I've thought about this, so I think I'm going to ask if she wants to do it. She did not seem very inclined before, but I didn't formally ask.
Sure.
And she might
it's just that there's there's probably a bunch of stuff that she knows much better than I do.
and
Although
again,
Eric's good because he's been there the whole time.
There's no attempt for me to try and make a narration for this slideshow. I just wanted to add a little bit of texture.
Right.
From those who know him longest.
Right.
You being you
sure.
and Eric.
Yeah. Well, that's a good.
The deepest, closest root of his original family.
Right.
Is what I was going for.
Okay.
Obviously, I could get lots of people to
talk. My God, yes.
And that would make an interesting thing too.
Yeah.
I don't have the time or resources to go into.
Sure. Well, and what's nice is that's going to happen at the various gatherings. I mean, it's nice that we're having time at BPA. That to me is very special. And then having things kind of before and after for smaller groups, there'll be lots.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Well, let's go through the rest of these pictures here. I'll probably have to get on my...
See if there's anything else. Yeah. was looking for something. Well, I think you've got the one of Bob with the sling, holding the fish with Mom. So that was another one. And I don't know if next door to Aunt Ruth's house was Bernadine Langley, who then married Judge Frank Ryan after her husband passed away.
This must be you and your dad.
No, yeah, that's me and my dad. Yeah, and that was a double exposure.
Oh, I see. Not sure I can use that, but
And then another first day of school. I can't tell you what year, but again, maybe 53. We always did these first day of school. That was almost like a ritual.
Rick wearing a striped shirt.
Yeah.
Bob in the little dark placket. Khakis with the...
Yeah.
That's your mom.
Yeah.
That's, or
Oh,
is
no,
that
no,
Judy?
that's Judy.
That is Judy.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then this is the first day of school on Bainbridge, and that was, I'm going to guess that's our, Bob was in 6th grade, maybe I was in 8th by that time, so maybe that was 50.
Rick is wearing the saddle shoes.
Yeah, I know.
That striped shirt.
That must
So
be,
that's around 58.
yeah, 57, maybe. I'm just trying to guess how old Bob was. Does it look like he could be a freshman?
No. I'd say
8th grade?
probably 7th or 8th grade.
Okay. So,
And
maybe I'm
you
a
look like
junior
you
or
could be
something.
You could be in 9th grade or something.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, so that could have been, 57, maybe. Just guessing. Okay, so there's a huge
That's it.
bunch of
Okay,
stuff.
good.
Let me find. I mean, can you move these around in its envelope, or do you want something
can,
bigger?
And I have big envelopes at my place that
Okay.
I put photographs in, so I'll transfer these when I get there.
Okay,
Make sure that they all come back to you.
okay, super. Put that in there. And if you have enough sort of picture of the house with that one with the snow picture, if you want a color picture, I have one.
You have one?
I do. It's in the other
If
room.
you have another picture of the house, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and kill this.
All right, let me let you start putting things away, and I'll hunt for that picture.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so go ahead and start the way you just did, Tell me.
Yeah. Well, as I said, he is my earliest, longest standing friend, or was. And the memories really go to being on Bainbridge together. Long. I mean, this is over 60 years ago. We're talking probably 1948. And at that time, both of our families, my father and his father, by the way, were brothers, which is why we're cousins. They were pretty close, my dad and my brother. His brother, my uncle. So when my parents came to Bainbridge and started summering here in these funky little cabins out on the east side of Agate Point, so did my uncle and his family and Bob. So being 12 days apart in age, it was just sort of natural that we found each other, and because there were other kids of other ages who tended to you tend to sort yourself out a little bit by, your age, and you don't. The bigger kids don't want to mess much with the
Let me
younger.
ask you something. If you were going to, so if you imagined that I was a real stranger, but I'd heard about Bob, but I really didn't know anything about him, how would you tell the story about how you know Bob and what Bob represented to you in your life?
Yeah.
And so try to just stay with your thoughts about
There's-
him and your relationship, and maybe like where you lived, what part of the world you guys lived in, and you don't have to get too detailed because I
Sure.
won't be able to use a lot of detail, but kind of sketch out what was going on for you when you were kids. What did you like
Sure.
to do? Who was Bob?
Right. Well, and I think that's an interesting point, because I think he and I had some obvious differences, and I think that's one thing that made the connection strong, because we were a bit unlike, and we complemented in a way each other, in that some of his qualities, I enjoyed and loved. I hope he felt the same way about me. We'll never know. But the thing I recall about Bob is he was always very willing. If you had an idea, and I often did have ideas. In fact, I am sometimes claimed that I thought of all these little things we could do and maybe get ourselves a little in trouble. Bob was always ready and willing to jump in, shall we try to see if we can make that old outhouse out in the woods kind of come off its foundation a little bit and see what we can make happen to it? Sure. So, off we'd go. We'd find something like that around the neighborhood. And, his willingness to just be a friend and to, I think that's one of the ways he showed how much he enjoyed and appreciated the friendships, is that he would be with you, and he was very willing to do whatever it was. He just entered into things with that spirit of, let's do it. And I suspect that characteristic is something that others picked up about Bob over the years as people who began to know him and befriend him, probably experienced the same thing that I had, as a young boy, and really appreciated the way Bob just jumped in, and he was in all the way, and he, you could count on him to be there and to, as we know, carry through with various things. And in the community in later years, he certainly demonstrated how he could. That was a quality where he just pitched in. You need help with the sets behind the stage, I'm your man. You need help stringing the Christmas lights at Christmas time, I'm your guy. Bob was always there. He was dependable. He was reliable in that way. He was really a good friend. And it was clear to me at an early age that was the quality about Bob that you could count on.
So I looked at a lot of pictures and a lot of them have you and Ric in them. And I started thinking of you
Right.
guys as the three amigos. That there was this, you had sort of I can feel it just looking at these old black and white pictures. That
Yeah.
There was a
Sure.
camaraderie. Tell me about the three of you together and what
Well, let's see. Ric was probably, in size, he wasn't really that much bigger than either of us, I think, one thing, physically. We all started out about the same size, and over time, Bob, of course, took off and became the largest of the three of us. But
Is Rick older?
there were only about 2 years separation in age between Rick and Bob and me. I think he found that we could be reliable companions, and maybe in a way, each of us, Bob and I, were to Rick something like Bob was to me. And Rick, being a little older, could probably think of more things to do, and would come up with ideas that somebody a couple years older would probably be the first to do.
You remember any of those?
Oh, well, I certainly remember things like who could climb up the trees the furthest, and it was a bit of a dare, and who could get into a tree and get as far up, get further as the furthest up in the tree that it was possible to climb. And I think Rick got the record, but he also got stuck at one point and had to be rescued by my mother because there was some spot where he couldn't quite get back down, I guess. But I think he was always, I had an older brother, but he was a year older yet than Rick, and I think he was a little bit more. I think the three of us, Rick, Bob, and I, tended to spend a little more time together, being about. My brother was larger than the three of us, and he had a pal about his age, and they tended to stay together. So Rick, Bob, and I were a little more together, and Rick is the oldest, I think, was sort of the leader among the three of us, and we acknowledged that, I think, and I think he just thought of a few more things to do than Bob.
Can you tell me about where you guys were living and how far apart were you, and how did you meet in the morning? I mean, did you use the telephone to call each other?
Well, I'm kind of forgetting how we did that, but I don't know that I don't think those little cabins were equipped with phones.
Tell me about
Because
that. You mentioned the cabins.
The
So
cabins,
what's the deal with
the east side of Agate Point, maybe a mile north of what we referred to as Blowdale, a half a mile north of what we referred to as Blowdale Corner, where the Blowdale Reserve Gate is. That's about where you had to take the roads that went down then to the beach. In later years, roads, and there were roads. That's how we got there. But in the early years,
Let me
those
stop you just a second, because if I'm
I don't
listening
mean to
to
digress.
this and I don't really know you and I don't know about Bob,
Right.
I don't know anything about why you're there. You're
Sure.
talking about cabins. I don't know what that is. So
Yep.
I presume you were summer folks and stuff like so.
There
So give me
there were a group of several families that I think knew each other in Seattle, and that's where Bob and I were born, and that really spent most of the year. But the adults who were a group of friends, some of them I think one of them in the family was a cabin at the east side of Agate Point, so it became a natural place for these adults and their kids to come. And they realized from the early mosquito fleet days that there was a dock where a boat would land, and these cabins were originally built and only accessible from the water. And then over time, I think by the 40s and 50s, the roads began to be built out that way so people could get to those neighborhoods by roads. And here were these funny little cabins that were left along the beach in different spots. And several were rentable. And so my family and Bob's found cabins probably within 200 to 300 yards of one another, stretched out along the beach, up on the bluff. And I kind of forget where we did meet and exactly what the.
Was there a time period that you went every year?
Yeah, it was after school, so it was probably by mid-June when school was over, because although Bob and I may not have yet been in school, the older kids, my brother and Rick, were. So we waited till after the school year was out, and then usually by about mid-June, we would come over, and we wouldn't go back until after Labor Day, typically, and would spend the summer. And the dads would commute back to Seattle because they all had jobs somewhere in downtown Seattle, and there was a ferry. There was regular ferry service from those, I think, dating from the 40s sometime. So that's what they did. And then the families, including the moms, just hung out in the neighborhood, and there was a lot of time to be on the beach, a lot of time to be in the water, in these funny little boats we would row out in, and there was time to be in the woods back above the beach, and so a lot of time to spend together, and sometimes in mischief, and sometimes not, but. So that was really a bonding time, I think, when Bob and I and Rick too really got to, had an opportunity to be together in this carefree existence there.
Did
Pretty
you,
nice.
Did you always get along, or were there times that you had disagreements or even fights or anything like that?
Well, I don't think we were different than any other set of. Let's see. I think there were more boys, as it turned out, in the several families there than girls. And I think, as will happen, and there was a hierarchy, certainly. The older boys were. There was a club formed called the Coyote Club, and you had to sort of prove your mettle to get get in it, and the older kids sort of ran it, and then the younger kids probably had an initiation ceremony.
Could you use their names so we know who you're talking about?
Well, there was Rick. I had an older brother, Mike, at the time, 3 years my senior. There was another fellow, Rich or Sam Langley, who was my brother's age, and then there were another family. The Jacobson family had two quite a bit older. In fact, probably so much older that they weren't really part of this. But there was another family, the Henshaws, who had a couple of older kids, and they're probably in their early teens by the time we showed up.
Just to kind of encapsulate the immediate families, can you just say who all the siblings were and the cousins? And
Well, the two sets of families related were our family, which consisted of my brother Mike.
Go ahead and use names.
Cederwall, Eric Cederwall, my name. Our parents, Ruth and John Cederwall. Then there was Bob Cederwall, Rick, and an older sister, Judy Cederwall, and their parents, Roy and Jean. So we were the related people, and then there were other families not related. But
so, what age do you go back to that you remember spending time with Bob and Rick?
I would put it in the late 1940s. So there are pictures documenting us together, probably from the summer of 1948.
So what age are we?
Tykes.
Tell me what age.
Well, Bob and I had not yet turned 3, so you can see we were at a very tender age, because 48 would have been the year we turned the age 3, but in October.
So
of that
explain this
year.
to me. You say 3 is the age of what now? Is that when you first met, or?
Well, I think we probably had met earlier, but I think when the real memories were sort of cemented, probably started at about that age. in the late 40s. And my brother would have been 3 years older at age 6, let's say, or turning 6. Rick would have been turning 5 about that time. So pretty tender age. And I think every year until we, keep with Bob and me at age about 3, at age 9, so after 6 summers, the family moved over permanently. This would have been by 1955, having acquired property. Prior to that time, just renting these different funny cabins. But my dad and his brother, my uncle, acquired a lot and then subdivided it and proceeded to build 2 summer cabins in about 1954, and then decided later that year, let's just expand on to those and move over year-round. So by August of 1955, the move was completed.
Who all was moving?
Well, there were the 2 families, Rick, Bob, Judy, Eric, Mike, and their parents, the Cederwalls. Another family was Langley, living next to us with their 2 children, Richard and Donna.
It's okay. Let's just take the Cederwalls. I think
Yeah.
that's simpler.
And there are other
I
families
won't really
too.
be able to deal
Sure,
with the other
sure.
families. So can you just do sort of a cursory evolution of your friendship with Bob? I mean, can I go through the ages? Did you go through elementary school together, for instance, and high school and all that stuff? So both grew up on the island, and
Well, there was, and Seattle previously, in the last 2 years that we each resided in Seattle, my parents moved into the same Magnolia neighborhood that Bob's family lived in. So we actually encountered each other during the rest of the year in Seattle for a couple of years in the early 50s. And then at age 9, we moved in the summer of 55, moved to Bainbridge, and then started 5th grade here in the same. There was only one 5th grade class at Captain Wilkes Elementary School. The first year it opened was 1955. We were there for the opening year. In the 5th grade in one classroom, so we were both in the same class for the whole year. And then by 6th grade, it was the same school, the 6th grade classroom, one class for the whole year. So we spent our school days in the same class, rode the school bus together both morning and afternoon to get to school and then to return in the afternoon home. And then frequently played some after school. So there was a good bit of time that we saw each other. And I think starting in the years probably, or the age of about 12, at probably beginning in the 6th grade and 7th, kids begin to, I would say, grow up a little more. They start to mature. They start to develop their personalities probably a little more. And I think Bob and I experienced this. And I think we would have both said that the relationship changed at that point, because instead of being just these little kids, footloose in the summertime, running around anywhere we wanted, there were other activities. Suddenly, there were school peers, there were girls. And I think it things, that changes the opportunities, and I think as you grow and mature, you begin to become more your own person, and I think that naturally happened with each of us, and we sort of developed who we were from that point on. And I don't think we ever lost, a sort of affection for one another especially for the times that we had in those earlier years when we were together so much, and it just seemed like such a great fit to be together.
Let me have you just go by that one more time and just kind of simplify that, you'd started off being close as young, not toddlers necessarily,
Yeah.
but young kids, and then at a certain point you begin to break off.
Diverge,
Just simplify that,
Sure.
just to say.
Well, I think it's natural that as you grow and develop that
Tell about what happened with you rather than what.
the experience of going through childhood together, in a way, it has to have. It can't. It's an idyllic time, and in a way, it can't last forever. And I think each of us, and I, knew this. And as we grew up, each of us, side by side, it simply happened naturally that we began to find our own in somewhat different paths. So I don't think we regret that. I don't regret it. I cherish the time we had together in those very early days. You can't bring that back, can't relive it. And so I'll always remember those times. And I think we always had a special affection for each other. I know I did for Bob from those times. And while we could respect who we then became later, and as well. So,
And then as you got older, and I recognize that, because like you say, this happens with everybody. You have these real close relationships when you're young, and then you drift apart from each other,
Yeah.
and then there's a kind of a coming back together at some point. So can you talk about what age you
Sure.
were and when you and Bob became?
Yeah. Well, there was, from, we each went on to go to college after high school, and I took different paths for that. And his path led from that to the Army, to marriage and living in Denver. Mine pretty much stayed in the Puget Sound area, Seattle, Bainbridge Island. And I eventually acquired a house in the late 70s. And I think not long after that, Bob came back to Bainbridge to live, began working here. And as time went by, we saw more of each other. Then something came into Bob's life, or I should say, or somebody. Her name was Denise. And that actually, I think, tended to bring us back a little more together, because we began to socialize, whether it was Denise, but there tended to be a little bit more socialization that started to occur, and structuring of some of these opportunities to be together. And
You guys both participated in each other's weddings?
oh yeah, that's exactly right. I don't recall whether I was best man for Bob. I might have been. I certainly was in the party, and his brother was was there as well. He was my best man later when Joe and I married. And I only participated in one production within the performing
Let me
arts.
stop you for a second. I wonder if you could go back and talk a little bit about Bob's proclivity for theater, and if you witnessed his developing interest at some early age. And then I'd love to hear you talk about you
Yeah.
getting involved in it and how that came about. Did
Sure.
he talk you into it?
Well, to do that, I probably need to go way back to the middle school and high school, where Bob was more of a thespian. In fact, was involved in high school theater. I tended to not do that as much. I think my brother and Rick and Bob all jumped in and were more active in the plays at school than I. Later, I think as Denise came in his life, she, of course, always interested in plays and the theater, and I think it suddenly kind of, Bob clicked and got back into the mode of being involved in the productions. And in 1984, after watching them begin to be involved as a spectator, I was persuaded to be a part of the Fiddler on the Roof production in that year, BPA production, along with Bob and Denise and many others. Had a small part, but spent as much time on the set, it seemed like, as rehearsing as anybody else, even for that. It was an unforgettable experience, and I completely admire people who dedicate themselves enough to be involved in it regularly, like Bob and Denise and others. At the same time, I decided, well, maybe this is not for me. And so it was my only foray into being involved in local theater as a performer. But I've been over the years. I've been a regular attender of performances by Bob and Denise, and certainly have admired the work that he's done. And I know that he's done a huge amount in the world of local community theater at BPA and other locations.
So I wonder, Eric, if you'd tell me about Bob's outstanding characteristics. And by outstanding, I just mean the things that people really know him by. And just kind of maybe go through the different things like that. I might say cooking and traveling and to theater,
Sure.
and then his work with the logging and all that sort of thing. What would you say?
Well,
And
I
we're gonna
think
include all of those things. I wanna
sure.
hear the whole story from your side.
I think Bob was, do we still use the term bon vivant? I think Bob was a bon vivant. I think he enjoyed so many aspects of good living, good food, good wine, good friends, the arts, travel. I think there was no one that did this to a greater extent, and by doing those things, and in doing those things, he was involved with a number of people who felt had similar interests, and I think from those experiences and contacts, had a huge network of friends, not all of them knowing each other, and that he was involved in different areas, but that really made for a full and active life that I could see. And certainly I think his glug parties were famous, and an invitation was to be, to that was really to be, was sought after, and you were lucky to get one. His activities working, I think were pretty legendary. His skill and sort of risk and daring in doing what he did to make a living with saws and climbing in trees and the precision required, cool judgment and then execution of these cuttings and whatnot, fallings are pretty amazing. And I think he had a reach into other parts of our community. I've talked about the arts and all of these things, but I think he had an affinity for the working, that the guy was out there doing the hard. Bob's work could be hard and dirty and arduous. And I think there were other such jobs people perform on this island. And he knew all of those people. And I think they had a special kind of affinity for one another because they knew and respected each other for what they could do with their hands and the skills they had, sometimes taking risks. So not many of us could appreciate that part of Bob. And I was the day he died. There was a visit from a worker, a helper, who was coming to express his condolences, and it was very touching to me to see a man who saw Bob and respected him as his employer, and knew that with Bob's passing, it was going to be now hard to, get on with someone where he could make a living. And it was touching to me because you began to recognize that ways that Bob's life may have reached into others' lives that you may not have been aware of, where, maybe a word from him or some assistance from him could make a big difference in the lives of some of these people that work with their hands.
What are
So
some
that
other
was-
things that you remember about Bob that he did that were, if not unique to him, they were a signaling part of his character?
Well, we knew that Bob's job was oftentimes to take down trees, and he wasn't just somebody who cut down trees. I think Bob, we all know, if we were lucky, as he was working, he might, in a tree that had to come down, he might discover a nest up there, and he was always looking for these little things, or a special burrow or something about a tree that was unique. He treasured finding these things, and I think he had an eye for finding them. And when he did, he would always preserve them, bring them back, and I think he knew that somebody might appreciate something he found that's pretty unique, that you just don't encounter. Most of us don't encounter. And I understand he would take these things to people who might enjoy a nest and say, look what I found here. And so that's something and I think just simply being up in the tops of trees gave him a perspective on things that many of us, literally, many of us don't have the opportunity to have. And I think he really developed, he didn't want to see the island change and see the trees all cut down because he cherished them. He really, I think his first instinct was to save a tree if he could, and to show a tree owner how that tree might be helped and not simply cut down, And so I think that was a quality. Though I think he really did admire, and there was a conservation ethic in his that I think developed from his the fact that he made his living the way he did. And
What about things that he did for the community as a volunteer?
well, we know, or I know, I shouldn't say I claim to know everything, but the things that come to mind are his willingness for the downtown groups to put up banners across Winslow Way at certain times of the year, advertising or giving information about an upcoming event, the 4th of July, or the opening of a show, or Christmas time, of course, the lights going up. He, as we know, maintained a star of lights up in a tall tree on Denise's property, Winslow property, that has become a beacon and a real landmark. Well, it's located on the property of Denise's studio, so in the east, Winslow Way East. And I think can be seen, I understand it can be seen from way out in the Sound if you're looking right at the right spot. That I know was something that he did, and I'm not sure, I may be missing others that he other things he was known to be involved in that way, but I suspect there were other things he did that he did quietly.
Put up some stars at the church. Grace?
Oh, that I didn't know. That was news to me. I know that he maintained a star up on their property at their residence, and that went up. That was turned on during
Why do you think Bob
Christmas
wanted to
season.
climb trees?
Well,
Just your thought.
well, my thought is that it was something he learned he could do, and perhaps he knew others couldn't do. And somehow that may have appealed to him.
Say that again, but put in the thing that you're talking about. You're talking about him being able to climb trees so that I can put it all together. It's a lovely thought.
Well, let's see if I can, how that works. Tree climbing is not a skill that many of us are going to have and become good at. It takes a lot of, it's very physically demanding, and it takes more skill than I think any of us realize to pull off safely. Whether that, and I think that was a skill or skills similar to that he learned in the Army, actually, and techniques using ropes from his training. He knew from that training that he could use some of those skills in this way, and I think he really found that he enjoyed the challenge of climbing the trees and being able to work with them. And it was a skill that so many of us couldn't do.
What you said earlier was so concise and so elegant.
So why am I trying to say it again here? I've
No,
forgotten.
I just wanted you to put into it so that I could put it all together, that what we're talking about is Bob liked to climb trees, and you said, I think it was because he found something he could do that he knew other people couldn't. Do you remember that?
Well, I said, yeah, sure.
So I just want to have that in there so that we know what that statement is about, that it was about him climbing trees.
Yeah.
He liked to climb trees?
Well, in fact, we can go back to the very early days when we talked about some of the things the three of us did together. I think his first tree climbing skills were learned at a very early age, and I think he found that that skill later perfected could then be used in a way to make a living, and it represented something that he almost uniquely could do. And I think he was immensely proud of that. As difficult, I think, as it was to pull off, I think he could make it look easy.
There's a small community of people who do that, right?
Well, it is. He wasn't entirely the only one to do it, but it is something that sets you apart in terms of your ability to do it. You become very much in demand, and there are times of the year, as we know, when trees fall and the weather is terrible, and people really rely on somebody with the skills and the ability to come out in oftentimes very inclement weather to be able to save their situation by taking a tree away that is either dangerous or has already come down and needs to be taken away in conditions that are less than favorable. And Bob was always there to do that.
Cool.
So,
So, just to kind of cap it off, you know, if you were just gonna say, you know, my cousin Bob, he was this.
well, I thought about that earlier, Steve. Let's see if I can come up with the...
And don't worry about having to say it right,
Yeah.
one perfect way, because we can do it over and over, and you can come up
Yeah.
with what you like best.
Well, he was always so willing to be your friend, to be there. He was unselfish in that way. I think I think it gave him a joy to know that he could be that companion, he could be that friend. He would be with you. He was willing to be walking with you and that whatever that path might have been. And to him it was important quality was that he be connected with you, and you always kind of felt that way about him. He made you feel that, well, I'm going to honor you by my friendship and by, and I will go with you.
Good. I like that. That's very nice. Say it again. Now that you've thought it through, say it again and just a little bit smoother. You know, start off with my cousin Bob or something like that, so that we have a subject, you know, to the sentence. Don't think about it too much, because
You can overthink. And in a way, it has to flow. My cousin Bob demonstrated that what he saw as important was the journey of being with you and making you feel like you were important, because he was telling you that it was a great privilege for you to select him to be part of your adventures, and he committed himself to those adventures and wholeheartedly. And I will always remember that.
Nice.
It's hard to...
Is it hard to do that? I don't want to torture you.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty good right there, what you did.
Yeah.
You tell me if I make you feel uncomfortable.
Well, I guess the one quality I could say of my cousin Bob that will always remain with me and I thought was unique was his ability to make you feel like you were the special one, and he wanted to honor you by his willingness to be with you and to share with you what you wanted to share and do. It was his way of honoring you and telling you what a special person you were. And what a quality, what a gift Bob could make of himself. What a gift he gave us in that way. I don't know if I can do it again, Steve.
Don't do that. Don't do that. You did it
Thanks.
perfectly. That's
Thanks.
beautiful. That's beautiful, and we don't have to
But-
go any further.
Yeah, you can think too much, and you can have these early thoughts, and I oftentimes I think I do best composing. I mean, this is different. Speaking can be, for some people, is really hard, and sometimes people can speak their thoughts very clearly, and it comes to them easily. And other times you go through it too much, and then it becomes difficult.
And it's very it's very obstructive to feel as if you're being judged.
Your performance, yeah, right, I
It's
know.
a performance. You have to meet some kind of benchmark or some
I
standard.
know. Right.
Everybody's going to be looking at it and
Yeah.
picking it apart.
Yeah, no. I
Yeah.
think I tried to say that the best I could, but I think it
You did.
was a characteristic of his. I mean, some of us, and I frankly admit, to me, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to jump in always. You say you'd like to do this. Well, I'm not so sure I want to do that. Sorry. Bob didn't have those reservations oftentimes. He was with you. Yeah, that was pretty special.
Boy, I'm right there with you, man. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I think.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you say that because you have
Yeah, well,
longevity of relationship.
he was a pretty special guy that way, because I think so many of us in our lives, we get into our little compartments and, especially with all the digital. I mean, Bob was never much of a digital guy. We know that. I mean, I don't think he ever had an email to speak of. But, because he didn't, he was there and he could kind of be there, he's pretty much always there for you in that way. Whereas sometimes if people are busy or, they're like this, they're not really.
Yeah.
So
I know. You see it
he
all the
wasn't
time
that
now.
way.
The
Yeah,
little blue light up on their face, in the dark
Right.
room. You see it everywhere.
yeah.
Anybody standing around waiting for a bus now has always got their head down.
And you're walking, you hear somebody starting to talk, and you wonder, now, is that person just kind of bonk, And then you realize, oh yeah, it's so more common now. There are people who are walking around with no apparent, thing, but there's some little tiny bud, I guess, in there. Instead of being connected with anything about where they are, they're in that conversation or wherever. But that's our lives.
We got it.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.